Hello, SHRM family. Welcome to another edition of the WorkplaceTech Spotlight. My name is Guillermo Corea, Managing Director of SHRM Labs, SHRM's Workplace Innovation Lab. I'm your host for this series where we shine a spotlight on some of the most interesting future of work topics, innovators, and disruptive technologies. Before we get started with today's topic, just a couple of announcements here for SHRM members who are not yet familiar with the workplace tech community. Please know that we launched this. Think of this as the TripAdvisor for HR tech. So if you're a SHRM member, please go there and use it. Check out all the latest and greatest HR tech that's available. Also, on June 6th, we're going to be doing a very special edition of the Workplace Tech Spotlight, in which we're going to be featuring the finalists of the Better Workplaces Challenge Cup. These are some of the most innovative startups that were able to make it through our competition that started back in February. The two finalists are actually going to be battling it out in person at the SHRM annual conference. As all of you know out there, the largest HR show in the world, and we're going to be in Vegas this year from June 11th through the 14th. So hope you're able to join us there. Also, for those of you watching on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, please share this live stream and tag SHRM. You can use the hashtags SHRM Labs as well as Workplace Tech. So let's get to today's topic, right? Retention and recruitment is the number one issue that HR is currently dealing with, bar none. So we all know that in today's fast-paced job market, finding the right talent can be quite a challenge, especially when faced with the notorious skills gap. A whopping 83% of HR professionals struggle to find candidates with the right skills and competencies. And because of this, organizations are finding the talent they need from non-traditional backgrounds. Organizations hiring diverse talent, according to SHRM research, are 35% more likely to financially outperform their competitors. That's where apprenticeships and skills-based hiring come in. By tapping into the knowledge industry of veterans and promoting hands-on experience, organizations can unlock untapped potential and build a highly skilled workforce. So what is stopping organizations from transforming their hiring practices? So joining us to talk about this topic today is Lateesha Thomas, CEO and co-founder at Onramp. Lateesha, thanks so much for joining us and welcome to the stage. Before we get going, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself as well as Onramp.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Onramp. Onramp is a workforce development platform helping companies build and scale their technical hiring efforts via apprenticeship. We really founded Onramp because we wanted to be the conduit between companies who were looking for highly skilled labor and career transitioning candidates who are eager to learn and ready to fill those roles. I myself spent several years working in the coding bootcamp industry. I saw thousands of graduates complete intensive programs with the promise of a new career at the end of that journey. But I learned that even if candidates manage to acquire a baseline set of technical skills that should really give them a competitive edge in the job market, they still face pretty significant bias due to existing hiring practices in the industry. So companies have spent years scaling traditional hiring methods like industry and university recruiting, and those processes tend to filter out a lot of really capable candidates from non-traditional backgrounds. But it's within those non-traditional pipelines where more diverse candidates can be found. So my co-founder and I realized that if we wanted to make meaningful inroads on both the skills and the skills gap and diversity problems, we needed to really build the bridge backwards from the company to the candidates and create a mechanism for businesses to invest in workforce development and candidate upskilling.
Fantastic. So let's get right to it. What is skill-based hiring and why is it needed, important in this, especially in this moment? As you heard me say just a second ago, recruitment and retention is the number one issue that HR is dealing with.
Yeah, I think it's important to first really dig into the moment that we're in, because I think there's a lot of confusing mixed signals that we're seeing and needing to interpret. So it's an increasingly tight labor market, despite a seemingly a seeming economic downturn. Unemployment is at its lowest in 50 plus years. We're seeing 250,000 jobs plus created on average a month in the US, despite ongoing layoffs happening in the tech industry. So that can be confusing as well. So there's still a very real competitive war for talent happening right now. When you marry that with a global talent pool that less than half of the candidates have 4-year degrees, but almost 70% of job recs listed as a requirement. You can see that companies, when they're requiring that, are significantly decreasing their potential pool to hire from in an already competitive market. And then on top of that, you pile on a technical skills gap that already existed and will only grow in the future as we integrate new technologies like generative AI, which everyone is talking about right now, that is going to fundamentally shift the way that many jobs are performed. You start to see how a talent crisis is building, but not necessarily being adequately addressed. So, at Onramp, we feel that the solution to this massive problem is twofold. One, skills-based hiring, which is just evaluating a candidate's abilities and knowledge based on their specific skills and expertise rather than academic credentials or certifications or previous work experience, which we believe provides a more accurate assessment of a candidate's ability to succeed in a role. And two, marrying that with an investment in continuous learning and upskilling, both for their potential candidate pool and their existing employee base.
Fantastic. So how can companies adopt a skills-based approach to the recruitment process? And I agree with you, by the way, that a lot of these companies still have that 4-year requirement, right? And I think it's been proven already that, especially for tech type of jobs, right, that's not really the L and be all, right? So can you talk a little bit about the approach?
Yeah, I would say for starters, remove your degree requirements. I think employers often equate college completion with work aptitude and, disregard self-taught knowledge or other non-academic experiences. And they use a degree or where you previously worked as the primary signals for determining someone's ability to do the job. And that's just not a long-term winning strategy because actually college enrollment is down. So I read that there were, 1 million fewer students enrolled in college in the fall of 2021 versus before the pandemic. And, everybody seems to believe that's a trend that's going to continue. So, if your pool of qualified applicants or your pool of qualified applicants will really only continue to shrink if you defined your qualifications in that way. So companies that have removed their degree requirements are also using tools and applicant tracking systems that are still filtering out non-traditional candidates. So even though, a lot of companies have said we don't require a 4-year degree, they're still using tools that are looking for those signals to determine whose resume gets moved to the top of the pile, whose resume actually gets looked at by recruiters at their company. And so, you have to really be cognizant about that. Saying that you're removing your degree requirement is not enough. You have to actively be rethinking your processes. Once you've done that, you have to come up with other ways to determine job readiness, and incorporating skills-based assessments in the hiring process is extremely important. I think that's already happening for most technical roles, most engineering roles, where recruitment processes, often include coding challenges as a part of the interview process. Although, I believe most technical hiring interview processes also tend to be incredibly biased, and that's a longer conversation for another day, but at least they're trying.
Yeah.
But I think that for other types of roles, what does a skills-based assessment for a digital marketing strategist look like? Or what does a skills-based assessment for a customer success manager look like? You have to identify what specific skills are necessary to be successful in those roles. And companies aren't often thinking that critically. about that. So you really have to take the time to do like a full skills taxonomy for all of your roles and develop methods for assessing skills for those roles. And that's a lot of work. And I think that's what keeps companies from adopting new strategies, because overhauling existing systems like that and processes that they've spent years and years investing in can be challenging and expensive. So, you'll see a lot of companies who will run small pilots, but scaling those pilots means like battling like the existing momentum in another direction, which can really just like kill innovation. So I think working with partners specifically on this can be helpful to a lot of companies. And then we also recommend incorporating upskilling into your hiring process and beyond. So like for us, integrating free upskilling resources for job seekers into the recruiting process is, we believe, a pretty novel approach that at OnRamp we're working to build into an industry standard. And what that looks like is allowing companies to post job recs in a new way that really shows job seekers the skills required to be competitive. And then when you marry that with like direct access to company sponsored training modules for them to acquire the skills, candidates can, hone those skills, be better prepared for your interviews, for the roles, and really accelerate your hiring process. Fantastic. And then I think I was going to say just like a step further would look like launching an apprenticeship program. And apprenticeship programs are just, structured recruitment programs that employ a learn and earn model, which really, allows candidates to gain like the specific skills for your roles at your company while earning a living wage at the same time. That's important, like earning a living wage. Mm-hmm. So that means like not going back to school, taking on more debts, actually getting paid to learn, which, entices candidates to come to your company. So, I think that apprenticeship programs really help companies tap into high potential, like often overlooked talent to have the skills needed to do the job. But, you're essentially like getting to build your own talent pipeline. So, you can do that both for external employees, but you can also do that for internal employees. We call that an in-ramp. Not all skills need to be sourced externally. Like you can teach your existing workforce, and your existing workforce is often very eager to learn new skills if it means like more career mobility for them.
Yeah, and actually that's a great point that you bring up, because that goes to the retention issue that HR is having, or that organizations are having. So that's a way in which that could be addressed. By the way, I was listening to NPR yesterday, and they brought up they were talking about recent grads, right, and how some of them are basically going. It's kind of like they've learned the value of college and the amount of money that it takes to go there, and so there's actually people that are going for a semester, and then they quickly realize that, guess what, this is going to cost a lot of money. There's other ways in which I could get into the into the workforce, and I don't necessarily need to go get a 4-year degree. So I think that totally goes with some of what you were just saying. Touching back on apprenticeship programs, right? Do you think the U.S. has a problem with implementing apprenticeship programs?
Yeah, I think that the U.S. government certainly wants to create more apprenticeship programs. And I think that, they're making active investments to do that. But I think that there's just not a culture of apprenticeship here in the US. And so that makes it difficult for it to catch on. I think that like the landscape for apprenticeships in terms of like formal registered apprenticeship, both on the national level and on the state level, is pretty complicated. And we need, simpler, faster, like more accessible ways of designing and creating apprenticeship programs. I think that like getting access to funding for those programs can be incredibly difficult, both on the national and the state level, even though like investments are being made. So I'm sure everybody remembers when the Jobs Act was passed, like 2021, 2022, like a couple years ago. So out of that Jobs Act, there's actually like a new grant, an infrastructure jobs grant, specifically to fund apprenticeship programs. So apprenticeship intermediaries like OnRamp, like other organizations, can apply for those grant opportunities to get money to fund programs to build apprenticeships for companies. But, those, grant applications tend to be like 200 pages long that you're going through, and then you got to submit an 80-page proposal. Like, it is extremely complicated.
You need to find a consultant to help you out with that, right? In some cases.
In like every case, yes, 100%. So I think there's just work that needs to be done about like how we can make it more streamlined in the US to like easily create these programs and easily get funding for the programs.
Okay. So do you think it's safe to say that apprenticeship programs aren't as prevalent in the US as they are in Europe? Because in Europe, it seems, well, they've been doing it for a while now, right? And it seems like, is it safe to say that they make it easier or not?
Yeah. I mean, I think that they like certainly do make it easier. So I think that like some people know about the apprenticeship levy in the UK. So there's a levy that like requires businesses of a specific size to pay a percentage of their payroll tax every month. And then that's like money is then put into like essentially like a digital account or a digital fund where the employer can use to pay for apprenticeship training. So it's like, I'm already paying into this. The government puts in a little bit more. The money is gone. I can either use that to fund apprenticeships and fund workforce development, or I can lose it. So the incentives are obviously there. I like to think of it as like a carrot versus a stick scenario. Not that like the UK is using the stick and that like it's a punishment, because in the end, this benefits everyone. Like it benefits workers, it benefits the corporations to have skilled workers. Like it benefits everyone, but like they are paying a tax and then they get to use that money to then fund the program, versus in the US, the carrots, like we have to like convince companies that this is good for them. We have to like do the education to like help them understand like why this would be helpful to them. Like it's a constant like, trying to lure them into something, versus in the UK where it's just like, it is a mandate. And so I think that certainly helps. I think that like when there is like a very clear structured program, so I could think in the US, the like employer education reimbursement. So like there's a tax credit that like all employers can get. I believe it's like $5,250, like $5,250.
Yeah.
That's like employers can get like automatically reimbursed for providing education benefits to their employees. So that's really like how companies like Guild Education, for example, is like able to like make that easier for companies to offer those education benefits to their employees. Like when it is easy and obvious, then companies will take advantage of that. When it is difficult and there's a ton of bureaucracy, nobody wants to bother. And so I think that like, there are certainly states that are trying to make this easier. So in California, they actually just announced this in Q1. So for OnRamp, we are a registered apprenticeship with the DOL. We're also registered in the state of California. We'll be registered in additional states. And like what that gets us is essentially, additional funding to subsidize programs that we have to apply for to subsidize apprenticeship programs. But in the state of California, California DAS is the Department of Apprenticeship Standards. They just rolled out a $3,500 per apprentice credit plus $1,000 like completion credit, so $4,500 for a year for every apprentice that goes through a program, for a registered program in the state, and that's just an automatic reimbursement. And so essentially, they are trying to like replicate a model that exists in other countries to scale apprenticeships in the state. And, if we could adopt that on a national level, if we could adopt that like across other states, I certainly think it would help like with the proliferation of apprenticeships like across the country.
Got it. So last question for you, because we're running out of time here. Are there any resources or guides or anything that you could recommend for our audience listening out there that maybe they could tap into?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of apprenticeship intermediaries out there to support you. I am obviously partial to the one that I've created called Onramp. So certainly you can go to our website, onramp.io. We have a ton of resources there to support you. If you are interested in like if you have a program already at your company and you want to register your program, there are organizations like the Urban Institute and JFF who can help you register your program. We have relationships with both of them. JFF is actually one of our investors, full disclosure, and they're fantastic. If you do not have a program and you want for it to be registered with the DOL, because we are a registered apprenticeship intermediary, any program that we create for a company will automatically be registered with the DOL, will automatically be registered in the state of California. So yeah, I would say that it can be difficult, like trying to take on this work on your own and like navigate all of these processes, these like bureaucratic processes, in addition to like trying to create a quality program that's actually going to like yield results for your company and for your candidates. And so instead of trying to do all of that yourself and build that in-house, it's always easier to just like go to an expert to help support you. So that's my recommendation.
Cool. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much, Lateesha, for joining us with this great conversation. And for you out there, once again, retention and recruitment is the #1 issue that HR is dealing with, and apprenticeship programs is certainly one way that your organization could address that. We hope all of you enjoyed this conversation. If you'd like to learn more about Onramp, please visit them at onramp.io. And thank you all for tuning into the SHRM Labs Workplace Tech Spotlight. If you enjoyed this live stream, please share it using hashtags SHRM Labs, Workplace Tech, and SHRM. Visit us at shrmlabs.com to stay up to date, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend.